Devlin, Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
Welcome to the iOS podcast. iOS? Yeah. iOS, it's only sport. Martin Devlin, Lachlan Wall. We do a sports show 1 till 4 on the platform every afternoon, Monday through Friday. And then the highlights of that program are put in podcast form for you every night. More fallout from France. Justin Marshall with his thoughts on the opening loss. Can we still win the tournament? Because that really is the big question that we all want answered. Mark Watson, the ATM podcast, episode 54. He blames Foz. It's all Fozzie's fault. It's all Fozzie's fault. Well, what about the players, mate? The players play. And we haven't been the best in the world since 2019. You can't blame the coach. Not all the time. Are the Black Caps good enough to win the One Day Cricket World Cup? And why was Finn Allen not selected? Craig Cumming with his expert eye all over that. And stateside with Phil Murphy, some amazing stats on how popular the NFL is in the US of A. Plus, we play what has more chance of happening. So much sport to do. But first, as always, we begin tablets in hand. I say, gather my flock. It is time for a sermon. Can we still win the World Cup? Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Can we still win the Rugby World Cup? Yes, we can. All Black fans, do not give up. Yes, things look grim right now. And no, we are not the best team in the world. Accept it. Because no, we haven't been the best team in the world since we got smoked by England in 2019 at the last World Cup. But none of that matters. None of that means we can't still wriggle our way through and be the best team at this tournament. And that's what ultimately earns you the right to call yourself world champions. South Africa lost to us in their first match in Japan 4 years ago, and pretty convincingly, if you remember. But they bounced back, and in the end, they beat Japan, Wales, and then England in the 3 knockout games. That's hardly beating the world's best to win the World Cup even back then. But that's what it takes. That is tournament sport. Argentina only won 4 of their 7 games last year in Qatar to become the world football champs. It's all about how you play the tournament, how you manage your squad through the knockout stages, what kind of state your squad is in come those latter stages. So then it comes down to the question, are we good enough? You see, that's where I do have my doubts. I think other teams at this tournament are better than us, and they've proved that by beating us over the last couple of years. South Africa, Ireland, and now France. And we're going to have to face one of those 3 in the quarterfinal. But after that, get through that, fear not. England, RG, Aussie, whoever. That's the potential semi-final opponent. So get past the quarterfinal, and it's anyone's. And on a one-off winner-take-all basis, we are still good enough to beat any team. We proved that already at Mount Smart when we belted the box in the first 20 minutes. To me, it comes down to the A team. We simply have to get our best players off the injured list and back on the field. Do that, play our very best side, and I genuinely think we can still win the World Cup. All Black fans, do not give up. It all comes down to that quarterfinal. We get through that, and yes, we are good enough.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
Rugby to start with. No press conference. Jason Ryan speaking again overnight. What's in the sports news, Lachlan?
Plenty, Martin. And the biggest story, I think, well, I don't think it's a huge story. It's a pretty big story. It's a story. Sir Steve Hansen, he won 2 World Cups with us. He was an assistant coach in 2011. 2015 was the head coach. He became the enemy of the nation when he helped out the Wallabies because he was helping them with their entire World Cup campaign.
That's right,
Eddie's right hand. He was only there for a couple of days passing through. Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, he's doing the same thing with the All Blacks now, Sir Steve Hansen. He's lending a hand in camp. He's been welcomed back into more familiar surroundings, ones that are a little bit closer to home than Australia. 2 weeks after he joined the Wallabies at their pre-World Cup camp in France, Hansen is linked up with the All Blacks at their Lyon base for the next 3 days while they regroup for their second pool match against Namibia in Toulouse. That is on Saturday morning, New Zealand time. Some pretty unsettling news around the World Cup. An Ireland fan was allegedly, pretty strong words here, gang raped by 3 men while in Bordeaux to watch her country's opening Rugby World Cup win. According to reports in France, police are actively seeking those accused of assaulting a 37-year-old woman overnight on Sunday evening. She said she was said to have been walking near her accommodation the night after Ireland's 82-8 win over Romania when she was allegedly attacked. It took less than an hour, but the Warriors' NRL home playoff against the Newcastle Knights has completely sold out. On Saturday, Andrew Webster's men will face the high-flying Knights at, it's not Mount Smart Stadium, it's Go Media Stadium, Mount Smart, in the Warriors' final home match of 2023, regardless of the result. It's their first home finals game since 2008.
I was there, Roosters.
Yep.
And we whacked them by 30 points, I think. Yeah.
A week after that famous win over the Storm, when it was 8 beating 1, and a week before they got absolutely trounced by Manly in the preliminary finals, who went on to win the premiership that year. Juventus midfielder and Manchester United legend Paul Pogba
He can go.
has been provisionally suspended after testing positive for a banned substance. It's a real thing. Very Paul Pogba areas, just to disappoint people once again. The NFL is going on today. The New York Jets in their new era under Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was carted off injured, by the way, I think it was very early on in the first quarter. He remained down after being sacked by Bills edge rusher Leonard Floyd on a first down on the Jets' first offensive possession of the game. Rodgers was attended to on the field briefly. The exact nature of the injury isn't known yet, but it appeared to be his lower leg. Aaron Rodgers brought out for that game. Zach Wilson coming in. Zach Wilson's 4 out of 6, 39 yards. Not too bad, but the Jets are down 10-3. It's the second quarter, 4.5 minutes left in the half. Jets down 10-3 against the Buffalo Bills. And for the time being, Martin, that's what's making news.
Devlin,
That is a disgusting act.
the platform.
He is the single best analyst in New Zealand rugby. Absolute world class. Why on earth is he not part of the Sky Sport commentary team? Only they can answer that. So he's working for Supersport. I'm talking about Justin Marshall, 81 tests for the All Blacks. So looking forward to this. His expert eye breaking down that opening loss to France, and can we still win the Rugby World Cup? Your impressions now after watching the All Blacks lose to France are what?
Yeah, look, obviously disappointing for the All Blacks, because when we last spoke, Marty, we talked about the fact that I felt certainly what they needed to do is make a statement in this tournament and go out and create a little bit of doubt amongst the home side as well, being the favourites, and it didn't happen, did it? Look, they got out of the gates not too bad, but then things just went a little wobbly, and the concerning thing is when they did start to wobble, it just completely fell off the rails. And there's now this sort of weird period where they've got 3 games coming up through the rest of the pool play that they should win comfortably. So the thinking in my mindset is, since I've had a time to digest, where do they go with team selection from now to when they get to a quarterfinal knockout situation in the Rugby World Cup?
Justin, we're at this stage as well. There's a really interesting comment from Jason Ryan today at the press conference saying, when we get our full deck back, we can compete. I know that. What he's intimating is that those injured players that are missing are absolutely vital to the All Blacks. You know, I've sat there and almost demanded in my own mind that, hey, when you select a squad of 33, that every player has got to be interchangeable. And if you aren't up to that level, then what the hell are you doing there? But I think there is a distinct gap between Frizzell playing and the next guy playing, between Brodie playing, the next guy playing. You know, are we at a stage now where the replacements just aren't as good as the A team?
Yeah, we are. And let's not beat about the bush on it. Like, honestly, the French were missing 4 of their top players, but they didn't look like they missed the beat, did they? They had a new half pairing in Jalibert and Dupont. They went out there, they orchestrated the game plan really, really well. You know, new centres, they slotted in okay. They were missing second rowers, but it didn't have an effect on them. And their bench came on, and their bench absolutely changed the game and added impetus into the game. Whereas we, obviously with the same amount of injuries, probably not even as many, we didn't look like we had the same rhythm. And then when our bench came on, you know, it didn't change the game. And so you go, well, why are these sides having so much depth when we're not? And that's why I have to say that what we've got to do is we've got to find that 23, find it really quickly, and make sure that when those reserves, who know they're reserves, you know, don't beat around the bush about it. I know I've used that before, but don't deceive them. Say, hey, look, you're going to be in the 23, but your job is in the 63rd minute, you come on and this is what I want you doing. And they know their roles, and the starting 15 know their roles. I think that's where the All Blacks need to get to. That's the way that the best teams in the world at the moment are functioning, and they know that they can trust their depth. I don't think we can trust their depth at the moment, and that's very evident when we get into trouble on the rugby field, because unlike good rugby teams or All Black teams in the past, when we find ourselves in trouble, we can't dig ourselves out of the hole.
No, we can't.
We fall into it deeper.
Justin Marshall's with us, 81 tests for the All Blacks in France, for Supersport for South Africa. Obviously, the fallout always blames Ian Foster in this country. It's all Fozzie's fault, all of these records. And, yet another record. I don't need to tell you this, where it's a first loss in pool play, following on the back of the record loss against South Africa, losing to Ireland, Argentina, all of these things. Justin, you played enough tests for the All Blacks. Is it the coach's fault? When things go wrong on the field, as a player, what are you thinking and feeling? You can't look at the coach and go, help me. You've got to deal with it yourself. I always put the responsibility back first and foremost to the players. Am I wrong on this?
You're not completely wrong, but also the players should be encouraged to play instinctively. And when that game started to turn and the momentum switched to France's favour, sort of in that sort of middle part of the second half, and then there's a 20-minute water break, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, Will Jordan's on in the sin bin at this stage, but we've got a water break. The group needs to get together. We're kicking too much ball away. Right, how are we going to macro manage the 10 minutes now where we don't let the game get away from us? So they had that moment, which is not normal in a game, but because of the mandatory water breaks because of the temperatures, that's where your senior players, and for goodness sake, that's when the messages from upstairs are coming down as well. And everybody goes, right, in that period after that, they made 3 or 4 handling errors. They looked frantic. They didn't look like a composed side. And I'm just thinking, well, where is that breaking down? Is that the message came from the coaching box to say, do this, and they didn't do it? Or equally, did the players decide to take control and then they were the architects of their own demise because they literally made errors, made poor decisions to let the French continue their momentum and stay in the game, control the game. So there's too much leadership in there, Marty, for
that's what I'm
things
thinking.
not to be right.
Yeah.
Too many guys going. Some of them are in their third World Cups. Bloody hell.
Have we lost our aura, our invincibility? I'm just asking you these questions because these are all the things that get tossed around, my side of the microphone. It's like, oh my God, the All Blacks, the bubble's been brilliant. I suppose I'm asking, can we rebound from this? Can we actually collectively get it together and go on and win this tournament and do what South Africa did in Tokyo, losing a game and winning?
Absolutely we can.
Great.
And I believe in that aura, and I believe in this team, and I believe in those players, and I believe in the All Black brand and our attitude and our ability to win big games and our ability to win Rugby World Cups. I'm a believer, and I know that this team can do it. Rest of the world, not so. Making my way around France since that game, bumping heads with former players, they are saying the same things as the questions that you're asking me. They're asking me as well. They're going, why are they kicking the ball away so much? Why are they not quite getting their substitutes right? Why are they having discipline? Like other teams and other people in general are seeing the All Blacks not with that aura. So look, I feel they still have it. I feel they've still got the ability, this team, to bring out those qualities that make All Blacks and make us the country that we are, and the competitors that we are. But in answer to your question, that's my personal opinion. But making my way around, and I was legends today: George Gregan, Jean de Villiers, John Smith, like Skulk Berger. All these guys were saying, what's going on with the All Blacks at the moment? They are asking those questions. So if those guys are asking those questions, knowing that they've played test matches against the All Blacks and what they expect from the All Blacks, then something's slightly off, isn't it?
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
Next!
The Minister of Common Sense
We need to talk.
has to be involved.
We need to talk.
Next! Do you believe, Justin, can we still win the Rugby World Cup?
Yes, we can. Absolutely. A couple of things would have to go our way, but yes, we can.
Yeah.
Next!
Can we win it if the 4 players, first choice players currently injured, do not come back from injury? I'm talking Lomax, I'm talking Frizzell, I'm talking Retallick, I'm talking Geordie. If we don't have those 4 players in the quarterfinal, can we still win it?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
I think
we can get away without Tyrell Lomax. Who are the other 3, sorry? Shannon Frizzell, Geordie Barrett.
Retallick.
Retallick. Well, Retallick played. He came off the bench.
He came off the bench, yeah.
So I think we can say Retallick's more or less back. No, those other three. Which is like we probably do need to cool off the reliance or importance of Shannon Frizzell. Because
every egg is in his basket.
Well, I know, but I mean, this year his 2 tests against Argentina and then South Africa were his best matches in an All Blacks jersey in 5 years. But assuming he resembles that form and the physicality he brings, without that, and I think without Geordie and the way he can attack the line and get metres after contact, we need that.
Next!
We really do.
Retallick and Sam Whitelock, are they our first choice locks? And Frizzell comes back. Where does Scott Barrett play? Does he come
I would start Scott Barrett probably.
at 6? Or
No,
are you going to start him at lock?
At lock.
With?
Probably Whitelock. I'd have him over Retallick, just based on injury concerns. And I think form. I mean, Retallick hasn't been out of form, but I think he's been battling injuries for a couple of years now.
I don't think that Scott Barrett has been the best lock in the country.
I think he's been the best All Black this year.
Yeah, in the international part of the season. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
He was very good during Super Rugby. Oh, and guess what? You know what he did in Super Rugby?
He played every single game. Yeah, so how's that going?
Next!
After one round of what you've seen of the Rugby World Cup so far, who's the best team at the tournament?
I would say one of France or South Africa, only because with Ireland they haven't really been properly tested. And with South Africa and France, they took on 2 good sides and they got good wins. So I'd lean towards those 2 by default.
Next!
Who has been the surprise package of the tournament so far? I'm going to say England. Because this England side have been woeful for however long. They go down to 14 men. They get pragmatic. They get tough. They get hard. I saw glimpses of 2019, that England side and that side, just with their absolute ruthlessness and relentlessness and will to win a game of rugby.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so much ruthless, but just smart. Just smart with what they did.
Well, I think ruthless has taken 3 points when you get the chance.
Yeah.
Get up on the squad. That's what we talked to Justin about. I mean, it's just, All Black fans, we've got such short memories. Scoring threes. All of a sudden, you're up by 9. Guess what you have to do? You have to chance your arm, run the ball, score a try.
Well, that's what they did to us in 2019. They got that try and then just added penalties
just kept
after
adding penalty after penalty.
I would say Wales. I actually thought Wales weren't perfect. The second half where they scored most of their points, I just didn't expect them to beat Fiji. I thought Fiji would win that, and Fiji could have at the end there.
Well, if they had their first choice, first 5, they probably would have, because they would have kicked those goals.
Refereeing decisions, but I'd say purely because they won, I'd say Wales.
All right, final
and
question.
they looked all right.
Final question in this bout then. Does Razor solve all our problems then? Because I'm going to read you a list of names. We took 33 players to the World Cup, right? Beauden Barrett, Mwanga, Aaron Smith, Adi Savia, Whitelock, Retallick, Nepo, Frizzell, Lester, Coles. Have I missed anyone out? None of those are going to be there next year.
There's probably a few we have missed out.
Okay, and there's a few in the squad who aren't up to All Black standard. We know that already. So next year, Scott Robertson, the Messiah, is picking Super Rugby players. That's who he's picking. Because a lot of our first choice All Blacks are gone, retired, or on sabbatical, and he's got left a whole lot of Super Rugby players beating up on the Rebels, beating up on MP, playing great hard-ass rugby against the Queensland Reds. So is he the answer? Or does it still?
Well, no.
Does it come back to?
He is the answer.
My question has always been: do we have the cattle? And
no, we don't.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
So I'm not saying that Razor isn't the answer, but I'm saying that it's not all down to he gets handed, and all of a sudden we become a world champion side again. Who's he picking next year? Oh, I played well for the Highlanders. Well, good for you. Good for you. The Black Caps 15. To go to the One-Day Cricket World Cup and hopefully go one step further than we have ever before. We've made so many semi-finals. I think it's 7 or 8 semi-finals. We got to the final last time and drew the game against England. Then the rule book came out and we lost it, of course. No Finn Allen. Craig Cumming, former Black Cap, explain to us, is this a good idea? Why? And is this squad good enough to go one step further? Craig, it didn't slip under the radar yesterday, but there's a hell of a lot of sport to talk about from the weekend, so let's do it today. Black Caps squad for the One-Day World Cup announced. This is our strongest team. Is there anyone missing that you think should be in there?
No, I think, I was really delighted to see that they rewarded Will Young and Mark Chapman. Those 2 players, I think, in the last year have really showing their worth. I'm a big fan of Will Young, and you just got to look at his record, and he just needs a bit of consistency, I think, in playing. So really pleased they've rewarded those 2. I suppose James Neesham was the question mark. Which way would they go? And with Michael Bracewell being injured, they needed an all-rounder, and he's been there, done that, and I think it'll help. Jimmy being part of this team and being included because they travel around the world. So, no, I think, pretty good team. They had to make some tough calls. Obviously, Ferguson, they had Milne, they had Jamison, but they've probably gone with the tried and tested. So I think overall, you sit there, and I'm not that it really matters, but I think they've done well.
I just got to read you what Gary Stead said about Finn Allen. He said he felt when we looked at what the potential game plan was, looking at India, looked at the grounds, looked at the form of the two players, this was Young and Allen, Young was the right guy to go with. Did Finn Allen play himself out of a place in this squad?
I suppose in some ways he did, because he got given the opportunity, when they probably got rid of, Martin Guptill, and they gave him the opportunity and enough opportunities to say, hey, this can be yours if you go out and make the most of it. And we've got to remember, Finn Allen's still young. I mean, he's still learning the game. He's still learning. He's probably more comfortable in the T20. 50-over cricket still I always talk to you, Marty, about the word craft. There's still room for a bit of craft. And I think, he probably didn't put the numbers up that made him a certain selection. So what they did is they then sat around the table, and when you allow other names to be brought up, then you're not quite, probably nailing what you're doing. So, it's a tough one, and I'm sure he's hurting, but we've got to remember he is young. He is learning the game, and you've got to look at the other side. I think the form one is important. Will Young is averaging, I think, close to 48 in one-day cricket. So I think he's got probably an all-round game. He can play the new ball. Obviously, he's got a good strike rate. And his ability to play spin is very good too. So I think, maybe Finn hasn't taken his opportunities, but I think Will Young has.
Yeah, I mean, I just struggle with Finn Allen because it just seems to me to be so obvious. Dude, you don't have to hit the leather off every single ball. We love your attitude. We love your aggression. We love the fact you can take a game away from the opposition, all of that. But play with some smarts. Just play with some smarts, mate.
Yeah, it's a tough one, though, because, I mean, he made his name, and when he turned up for Wellington, I think 2.5 years ago, he came out and just bullied and probably surprised himself, and that's become his method. And I suppose they were trying to go down that method of having a top-order player who can go out and just create momentum, a la Brendan McCullum. Guppy, Guppy wasn't just a whacker of the ball. People forget, Guppy had craft as well. So when he was at his peak, he was not just a hard hitter of the ball. He could play the all-round game, a little bit like you're talking. And Finn probably hasn't played a lot of 50-over cricket when you look at his career. And maybe this is a moment where he might go away and go, right, I've got to work on those things. But in some ways, I think he was probably trying to do the job they asked him to do, and it didn't quite come off. So he's probably a little bit of a victim of what they were asking. But that becomes, I suppose, part and parcel. If you nail it and you go out and you do it really well, well, then that's the method they're going to go with.
Craig Cumming, former Black Cap, now coach of the Otago Volts, always our go-to guy when it comes to things New Zealand cricket. Ravinder gets in, and this is kind of a mild surprise, but not really. What is he going to bring?
Yeah, I mean, again, that Michael Bracewell role, and they want someone who can, maybe bat, and they've shown with Ravindra, they've been trying him everywhere, so they see him as very versatile, but it's the fact that he can also bowl left-arm spin. So, he gets in, they're going to the subcontinent. We talk about that all-rounder role. Well, he can do it, and he's a spin bowler. So, with Michael Bracewell being ruled out through his Achilles, that opened the door for Ravindra. And he's doing well in England. Bowled well the other night, picked up 3 wickets. So in some ways, he's been given opportunities and limited ones, but he's probably shown enough to say, hey, we need to take, and we're seeing it with the All Blacks, isn't we, Marty, if I'm able to say that when you go away to a World Cup, you've got to try and, I suppose, add up to the sum of all parts. Give yourself the options of all parts. So by having Ravindra there, if they lost Satner for a game or they lost, maybe even Ish Sodhi, they've got a guy that can come in and bowl spin, but also make sure they've got some batting strength there. So he gets rewarded for the fact that they're going to the subcontinent.
Next!
I will present a scenario to you, and you can tell me what is more chance of happening. The All Blacks do what Jason Ryan says, win every game from here on in and take out the Rugby World Cup, or the Black Caps win the Cricket World Cup.
You're going to hate this. I'm going to say there's more chance that the All Blacks win the World Cup.
I think there is.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
You agree?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't think that the Black Caps are going to win the One Day Cricket World Cup in India. I don't.
No.
Because I look at our squad and I think if we lose one or two of those, especially a bowler, we're dead.
Yeah.
I'm pretty, we got to hope that those guys are able to, and, these are guys who are playing a lot of T20 cricket at the moment, haven't played a lot of one-dayers.
And also, it's just the conditions that they'll be playing in.
Yeah.
The last time we were when not long after we'd won the World Test Championship, and we went to India and played them in a couple of tests. And I remember India were out of form, and they just destroyed us. Different format, I know, but just the ability to adapt to those conditions and beat them in their own back, it's damn near impossible.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Next.
What is more chance happening? So the All Blacks win the Rugby World Cup, or the Aussies win the Cricket One Day World Cup?
Okay, I'd say more likely that Australia win the Cricket World Cup.
Why do we see they go to a World Cup of cricket, we go to a World Cup of rugby? I think most neutral fans probably think, the All Blacks are going to win that. I always think Australia are going to win cricket. It doesn't matter what it is.
That's the thing, because we're not Australian. We don't follow that team week in, week out, and we don't get to know the players and the coaches and understand them. So I think with the All Blacks, we've become so pessimistic about them because they're just a shell of what the team once was. Whereas the Australian cricket team, we don't know them as well, so we assume they're at a similar level as what they've always been.
Yeah. It's quite fascinating, isn't it, people? Because if you talk to most neutrals, and we went through, remember, I think 8 or 9 different countries last week previewing the Rugby World Cup, and every single correspondent we had said that the All Blacks were going to win it.
Well, at least be in the final.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next.
What is more chance of happening then? That happens, i.e., the All Blacks clinch the 4th William Webb Ellis Trophy, or the Knights beat the Warriors on Saturday.
These are some good ones. You usually come up with ones where they're kind of humorous, but there's a very obvious answer. This one's hard. I'd say the Knights have more of a chance of beating the Warriors. Yeah.
On what basis?
Well, I'm more looking at the fact
the fact they've won 10 in a row.
Yeah, and the All Blacks have to beat one of South Africa or Ireland in the quarterfinals, and it'll likely be South Africa. And if it's not, it's an Irish team that has just beaten the Springboks. And if not, it means that France have lost to Italy, and on points difference or bonus points, we've managed to finish top of the table, which probably won't happen. And I wonder with the Warriors, I've thought like they've had a spectacular year, and full credit to the team and Andrew Webster. I'm a massive Andrew Webster fan. I just wonder, I've thought all year that they're massively overachieved, and when you look at the top 8 of the NRL, there's just one team that sticks out like a sore thumb to me, and it's the Warriors. And I just wonder, is the weekend going to be a little bit too much for them to play?
What did Andrew Webster say after the Penrith loss?
We were taught a lesson.
There you go. I love that about him too, the realism involved in that. He didn't try and sugarcoat it at all. The big worry I have with the Warriors is that we haven't played our best football for 6 or 7 weeks now. Haven't really hit our straps. So, within a week, can they do that? Can they turn it around? That's the big question that I've got. Because they're going to have to play, I believe, the best game of the season to beat this Newcastle side.
Yeah, it's an informed team. It's a team with rep-level players. When you look at who their best player is, he's probably been the best player in the competition of the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, Caleb Ponga.
Yep.
And, there is not a lot of experience at all in that Warriors team when it comes to not just getting to the finals, but winning games. I think they'll win, but I can if Newcastle turn up and beat them by a couple of tries, I would not be shocked at that.
What is more chance of happening then? The All Blacks do what South Africa did in 2019, lose their first match, go on to win the Rugby World Cup, or Tom Ford has his red card rescinded overnight by the judiciary. Sorry, Tom Curry. Tom Curry it is, not Tom Ford. Well, this is an easy one, mate.
Yeah, I think the second one.
It has to be, doesn't it? There's no way that World Rugby can rubber stamp that red card. No way they can't. They can't. It's just throws the whole sport into disrepute if they did that. I think this is a close one, though. I think the All Blacks got a hell of a chance, but I think there is more chance that.
Yeah, if you're going
to putting odds on it, I'd say that Tom Curry's probably about $1.50 to get the red card. And the All Blacks to me are probably about $3.
If you're going to keep the red card, if you're going to uphold it, you then have to give one to Jesse Quick.
Yeah, you'd have to do that on review. Yeah.
Next.
What is more chance of happening then? The ABs win the RWC, or Israel Adesanya comes back and wins the middleweight UFC crown for a 3rd time?
I think that's got more chance of happening. That Adesanya comes back and takes the belt back. Purely, I don't know much about UFC, purely on the fact that Phil Murphy thinks that's going to happen. So I trust Phil.
Yeah, and again, I concur, because I look to those who I think are experts in this, which is why we had Danny Podolsky on yesterday, which is why I talked to Mike Angover, he's an old mate, which is why we get Phil Murphy on. I want other people to tell me about the UFC because I'm just screaming at a TV, looking at that, and I always think that Israel Adesanya is going to win because to me, he's got the kicking game, which the All Blacks don't have at the moment. But Sean Strickland, watching him on the weekend, that just completely and utterly nulled that. Just got so close to him that Israel couldn't kick him. And he just didn't respond. He just seemed to have a big nothing. But I don't believe that's the end of him. You know, he's come back before. And to beat Pereira, remember that guy had aced him in 2 kickboxing contests and the UFC match. Remember, he'd beaten him 3 times. And to come back and knock him out, I believe he's still got one more big bout in him, at least Israel Adesanya. ATM, apologise to me, episode 54 of the Mark Watson podcast. He blames Foz. That's all he does. All he does is continue to blame Foz. What about the players, Watto? Ian Foster. Well, Shag's now in camp after being with Eddie Jones. Jason Ryan speaking today, saying that, he's just having a good look around. We've got every single brain that we could possibly have there on site. So is it just down to one man? Because I heard you on the weekend, I saw you rave and you point the finger at Ian Foster. And look, I do understand why people do that, but I also think it's very cheap because it's an easy out. When you've got players that are replacing first choice All Black players who don't step up to the mark, what we're looking at is an All Black squad which is mostly average. We don't have a lot of world-class players at the moment. And you can sit there and say, hey, this coach would turn Anton Leonard-Brown into the best second 5 in the world. I'd say bollocks, mate. The guy's been there for 7 years and he's still not the best in the world. How long do you have to wait? That's just one example to me. So I think you've got to temper the whole Ian Foster thing and actually hold the players as equally responsible. Is that a fair argument?
Firstly, Hansen coming into the camp, dance of the desperate. This is another sign that they're starting to run out of ideas. No, look, it's always been about coaches at an All Black level. Let's not kid ourselves. Ian Foster was in charge of the Chiefs for a long time, was awful. Dave Rooney comes in and suddenly turns things around. Blackadder was in charge of the Crusaders, did okay with them, got rid of him. Suddenly, Scott Robertson comes in and immediately the Crusaders go to that next level. I think there is a lot in a coach. Look, Ian Foster, my biggest issue here, I believe it was nothing short of absolute and utter nepotism, his appointment. I said this back in 2018 on another radio station. When it's all said and done, you can put all the rhetoric out there, Ian Foster will be your next All Black coach. He was. Scott Robertson came out and said he felt he was hijacked in that interview. He felt that Graham Henry, it was already predetermined.
Yeah, it was.
So do we have our best guy as an All Black coach? No, we don't. Now, you go through his record, though. You do go through his record. And what annoys me now is the default setting for all of these guys is judge me on the World Cup. So you're allowed 4 years of making mistakes. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, Martin, but I'm going to repeat myself from Sunday. So let's talk about the record. Let's put this on the record, okay? So he's the first coach to lose to Argentina. He's then the first coach to lose to Argentina at home. First coach to lose a series since 1994 in New Zealand, which was against Ireland, which was the first time we've ever lost a series to Ireland. First coach to lose opening game of a Rugby World Cup. First biggest record margin loss at a World Cup. Biggest record margin loss against South Africa 2 weeks ago. And so he's just got this track record of records. And I just want to put that on the record.
Yeah,
but apparently I'm supposed to believe it's all part of the master plan. Now, I haven't seen any evolution in the All Blacks game plan since, about 2017. We still just go out and play helter-skelter rugby. Now, we can sit here and blame the players. Absolutely, we can. If there's a shortage of playing depth, it's again because of what Chew and Hansen have done in terms of just killing every other form of the game, and there's no depth and there's nothing coming through. You've got to have a good base if you want the pointy end of the pyramid, and we don't with club rugby and NPC.
Mate, our under-20s came 7th, remember? Okay? So
Yeah,
that's the next generation. That's where we're at in New Zealand rugby.
Okay, and I put it back to Chew, I put it back to Hansen, I put it back to all the decisions they made and the erosion of all those other forms of the game. But at the end of the day, too, it is still Ian Foster who picks these players and he sticks with them. It's Ian Foster who was putting Beauden Barrett at fullback when everybody thinks Will Jordan should be at fullback. We saw Beauden Barrett on Saturday kick the ball away like we saw Beauden Barrett do in the semi-final of the Super Rugby against Canterbury, just aimless, mindless kicking. This guy was a great rugby player back in 2015 when we won a World Cup. 8 years on, he is yesterday's man. This is an All Black coach who has put a winger at centre. This is an All Black coach in the starting lineup, and his preferred starting lineup has a second string fullback starting at second 5. We learnt nothing nothing from Christian Cullen being played at centre in 99. We've learned nothing from Leon McDonald playing centre in 2003. We saw Jerome Kaino play at lock in our first loss against Ireland in the United States back in 2017. We saw them take Scott Barrett and put him at blindside in the semi-final against England in 2019. He continues to pick these players. And therefore, yes, he does take a lot of the responsibility.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes, the
I
players do need to step up. Yes, they do need to step up. But also, too, you look at the decision-making here and you go, well, hang on a minute, they've got 25 damn staff travelling with this team. Do these players actually ever need to make a decision on
they
their
don't.
own
And that's
when
part
they're
of
not
the
actually
problem, mate.
playing?
That's part of the
and
problem.
I think that comes through as well.
Yeah, it does. Look, I think the attitude
look,
of the players,
you
mate.
have
Look,
to point the finger. You have to point the finger at Ian Foster.
Okay.
Does anyone honestly not believe that if Scott Robertson's going to come in and make a difference? I do. Scott Robertson will make a big difference.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. ESPN Down Under's main man is Phil Murphy. He's a huge UFC fight fan. Why was Sean Strickland able to dominate Israel Adesanya like that? And can Izzy do a Muhammad Ali come back again and win his crown for a third time? All of a sudden, the ESPN doco 45-1 comes up. Buster Douglas taking out Tyson. And there was so much going on in Mike Tyson's life at that time. And he just wasn't ready when he got into the ring. At the same time, he could have won that fight, but he didn't. And he got badly beaten up in the end. It's fascinating to me that you're saying that Israel he wasn't there. Look, he was walking backwards from the very start. There's just, as you say, there is something missing. We don't know what that is because he hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, and he got in front of a microphone after the fight. I give him credit. He didn't have to do that, though he didn't say too much. He very quickly deferred to Eugene Behrman, and then he hopped on social media, kind of alluded to, I'll talk when I'm ready to talk, and then the camera stopped recording. So he hasn't really given us much, like you said. But all of this, you can't take away from Sean Strickland and his coach, Eric Nixick, who had the perfect game plan for Israel. And I had talked to Eric Nixick on our UFC Fight Camp show a couple weeks out about the challenge of planning for an Israel Adesanya. And of course, he didn't give too much away, but he was saying that, Israel's gotten to that point where he has an aura about him. And he told his fighter, hey, you got to move forward. The one round Strickland lost, was the second round. And Eric, with some colorful language I can't use on radio, the line he used that stuck out, he said, don't be snake charmed. Don't sit there and just kind of fall asleep. Stay active, stay forward. He doesn't have an answer for that. And 90 seconds left in every round, you could hear Eric Nixick on the broadcast microphone shouting, optics, close this round, punctuate it well. Don't leave the judges any doubts. And I didn't think he challenged Israel more than I thought would happen. But the really telling thing for me, Martin, was in that last 30 seconds. Strickland wasn't trying to, in the NFL, right? When you're ahead, you take the knee, kind of run out the clock. Sean wasn't doing that. He was moving forward with his hands down, shouting at Israel. I mean, almost bullying him in the octagon. And that, to me, was really telling that even in that moment, Israel didn't have anything to fire to try and just take a stab at it. So, if he needed some reprieve, I wouldn't blame him. That was his 11th title fight and 10th main event in 53 months. That's a high level of activity for a 5-round fighter who has had a kickboxing career before he came into mixed martial arts. He just might be ready for some time off, which is why if the immediate rematch doesn't happen, I think it actually might be to his benefit if he lets Strickland defend the belt once and then he's there in line for whoever's next. So I think it's really a win-win. It all comes down to his level of readiness.
Phil Murphy with us, ESPN Down Under. One more question on this. Styles make fights. And again, look, I mean, my background of any kind of, well, I'm not going to say knowledge, Phil, but, certainly my experience of watching fighting has been the heavyweight boxing as a kid, growing up through the years. And that Fraser, Joe Fraser with Ali, a much superior fighter, had everything, had reach, had power, had movement, had skill. And yet Joe Fraser was just able to do whatever it is he couldn't kind of defend against. Was Strickland that guy? Is he the one style of fighter that Israel will always struggle with?
That was as good as Sean Strickland had ever looked. I still think if they run it back, Eugene Behrman, City Kickboxing, I think Israel would win the rematch. But he's got to find a way to neutralize Strickland being willing to move forward and to dictate Israel's evasive movement. Israel is really great at going off at 45-degree angles away and attacking off of that. He was evading, but he never really attacked off of it in that fight. And again, I don't know if that was something, in his headspace, he just wasn't quite there, or if he just wasn't ready. I couldn't hear too much of his corner about what adjustments were being made. Eugene Behrman, his head coach at City Kickboxing, seems very confident that they know what to do in the rematch, and I trust that. But yeah, like you said, styles make fights, and Alex Pereira, who was the one guy prior to Strickland who had beaten Israel at middleweight, said, no, Strickland is the perfect foil to Israel. People laughed that off, and they're not laughing anymore.
No.
Maybe Alex Poatan saw something we didn't see, but that's why I think a rematch has to happen at some point, whether it's in 4 months' time or 14 months' time. Sean Strickland made himself a lot of money because now a lot of people are going to tune in to see the answer.
Finally, look, I could talk to you forever. I always say this when we're chatting, but I have so many topics of conversation. I'll just finish with this, though, okay? Because I love the perspective that American sport puts on everything. Here in New Zealand, as I say, we're all gnashing our teeth and we're waiting. The Rugby World Cup is on. We lost the opening game. The Cricket World Cup is about to start in another month or so, and that's going to get a billion audience. You know that in the parts of the world that love their cricket. However, in the US, you've had the US Open, you've got the MLB season winding up, but the NFL has started. So, how big is that, and does it just overtake everything else for the next 5 or 6 months, the NFL?
Martin, last year, 2022, the top 100 programs on television in terms of viewership, not sports programs, the top 100 programs. 87 of the 100 were NFL games.
Wow.
87 of 100. And another 8 were college football games.
Wow.
University games, which I know is very strictly an American thing.
Yeah, college games. Yeah.
And one of the remaining five was the program that aired immediately following the Super Bowl. People just left their TVs on after the game ended, and that was a top 5, or not top 5, it was in the top 100, one of the 5 non-sports programs. Then it was like a Meghan Markle interview with Oprah and a Joe Biden presidential address. That's the caliber of item you needed to crack NFL popularity in the United States. It overwhelms everything. It's regional, it's national. Now it's fantasy and sports betting becoming legalized in many of our states, which wasn't the case 5 years ago. It just continues to grow. It's a money-making machine. It dominates every conversation. We have a great number of sporting options. You and I will talk in June about the NBA and, maybe have a chat about the World Series. NFL is king, queen, rook, knight, every chess piece on the board, man.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform.